Hi friends, my name is Rebecca. I am an indie author of new adult fantasy and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I create videos to chronicle my journey as an indie author and to discuss all things writing. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, I'd love it if you could subscribe and follow along with me. Today, I am going to be discussing the second book of the Pixie Chronicles, a novel I have currently titled Crucible. So let's get into it. So to start, let's first talk about what Crucible actually is. As I mentioned, Crucible is the second novel in my series and is a very loose reimagining of the short story The Steadfast Tin Soldier by Hans Christian Andersen. As the source material is quite short, usually less than 2,000 words depending on the translation, I can safely say I have definitely taken some liberties with this story. Like all the books in the Pixie Chronicles, it is a fantasy and it's set in a fictional world in the year 1919. The setting for Crucible is very dear to my heart, as I knew when I first started drafting this book, I wanted the events to take place in a country heavily inspired by Mexico. Seeing Latin cultures depicted in fantasy is not something I see often, and it was really important for me to bring that into this novel. I would say that of all the countries I've created for this magical world, that this one is the most closely linked to its real-world counterpart. So the country is called Crucible, and it has been absolutely ravaged by a generational civil war. Crucible has long since closed off its borders to pretty much the rest of the world, and while it was once a leading figure in science and engineering, the war has truly broken its citizen spirits. Crucible specifically takes place in a couple major locations, the first being its capital city, which is a more dry, desert-like place. I flip-flopped a little bit on how closely I wanted this capital to resemble Mexico City, but I let myself mix things up a little bit more as the royalty of this book plays such a huge part, and I really wanted to play that up. By contrast, its second major location is in a jungle, and I have never written about a jungle before, so this was a huge challenge for me. Not only that, but this won't be the only jungle you'll see throughout this series, so I really focused on how to make each one feel different while still delivering what was necessary for the story. For Crucible, I wanted to create a jungle that felt not only wild, but steeped in danger and evil magic as well. Now onto the fun part, let's talk about the main characters. If it's not obvious, this book is so personal to me, and I love its characters more than I can possibly describe. That being said, they are all a bit rough around the edges and quite a bit more flawed than I usually go for my protagonists. And I'm not gonna lie, I have a very real fear that readers won't enjoy them. I love them so much, and they are who they are. I can't change them even if I wanted to. But I am wary of outsiders' perspectives, so you'll have to forgive me if I come off a little overprotective. So first up, we have Agustin Torres, also known as Tin by his friends. He is the central protagonist to the story and a corporal in the Royal Army. Tin is, by all accounts, an orphan, which unfortunately is not very uncommon given the war-torn climate of his country. He has been involved in the military from a very young age, as it gave him a family and safety when he had none elsewhere, and he has deeply devoted his life and identity around serving as a protector. Despite his perceived carefree attitude around his friends, Tin takes his role as a soldier very seriously, and his desire to obey can come at the detriment of his own values and morals. Tin is of average height with light brown eyes, medium brown skin, and black hair that he wears cropped short in the style as required by the military. He has a muscular build and he wears a prosthetic on his left leg from just below the knee. Next up, we have Tulio Montalvo, heir to the throne and probably one of my favorite characters I have ever created. Tulio is the youngest of 7 sisters, and he is liked by almost none of them. He is viewed by his country as a traitor, a brute, and a coward, and if it weren't for his mother, he probably would have lost his right to the throne a long time ago. Tulio has closed himself off from others, he has no friends, and anyone who dares get close is met with anger and disdain. On top of all that, he is also not particularly intelligent or intuitive, especially as his role as an honorary general in the army. But he is an excellent sharpshooter, so you have to give him that. Tulio has vibrant green eyes, light brown skin, and black hair that is typically a bit more outgrown than it should be. He is short and well-muscled, yet pudgy around the middle. He is also covered in scar tissue on around 90% of his body. Tulio is the type of character that I can't even begin to fully unpack in the span of one video. If it's not already painfully obvious, Tulio is hands down one of my favorite characters I have ever created, and I could literally talk about him for hours. When I initially created him, I poured a lot of myself into him, and he really helped me work through a lot of personal things I was working through at the time when I was working on the first draft. He's since changed a lot now, but honestly, so have I, and even if he's no longer a direct reflection of myself, I still cherish him deeply. But basically, to sum him up, he is sad and he is violent and he is pretty much overwhelmed with life in general. And spoiler alert, this is not the only time you'll be seeing Tulio again throughout the Pixie Chronicles, so be prepared for that. Our third major player is a lovely engineer by the name of Evita Cortez, known as Ava by her friends. She has been enlisted for a few years now, but her life definitely doesn't revolve around the military like Tin's does. She lost her father to the war when she was young, and as such is fiercely protective of her mother and her friends. This can sometimes translate to her being a bit rude or harsh, though it's mostly a result of her having to grow up much faster than necessary. She's also not shy about pointing out the flaws of the military or even the royal family. Her skills definitely fall in the realm of engineering, and she even helped create Tin a more comfortable and natural moving prosthetic leg. Ava is petite with an athletic build. She has hazel eyes, dark brown skin, and curly black hair worn short as is required. And last, but certainly not least, we have my cinnamon roll baby, Baltazar Delgado. Baltazar is a medic in the army, and he is deeply religious. He comes from a large, loving family, and he is definitely that calming, understanding energy that every friend group needs. Granted, he can come across a little tightly wound to some folks when it comes to his faith, but he means well, and his true passion is helping others. Baltazar is patient, gentle, and only a little neurotic. Don't discount him as some soft, boring pacifist. He's truly the rock that props up everyone else around him. Baltazar has medium brown skin, light brown eyes, and a mop of dark brown hair. He is tall, thin, and lanky with a wide gap between his two front teeth. Next up, let's talk plot. Because there was so little source material to work off of, it definitely is a bit more difficult to sum up my version of this story, but I'll try to keep this as clear and concise as possible. The Prince of Trisal, Tulio, has returned home at long last after a mysterious absence. As soon as he returns, he enlists a small platoon to accompany him on a secret mission out in the middle of nowhere. Tin, Ava, and Baltazar are three of those soldiers enlisted, but they are given no further details on what exactly they're hoping to accomplish. But after a devastating attack, Tulio once again shifts his focus and decides to enter the nearby jungle all alone. And just like before, his motives are entirely secret. However, Tin volunteers to go along with him, and Ava and Baltazar follow suit. The four make the trek into dangerous territory where enemies of the crown lurk in the shadows. Notable plot points include fire magic, an alternate dimension, mechanical horses, and a heart-shattering betrayal. And lastly, a final update on the status of where I am on this project. If you've been following my channel, then you'll know that this is the book that I have been working on for what feels like forever. I completed the first draft for NaNoWriMo, I think maybe 4 years ago at this point, and I have since completely rewritten it and given it 2 rounds of edits. I had hoped to at least have it with betas already, but I honestly believe it needs at least another round of edits before it's ready. This book feels like one of the largest projects I have ever taken on, and because it's so dear to my heart, I'm never truly happy with it. Every time I open it, I only find more flaws with it, and I don't know if it's because the writing is truly that weak, or because I'm so scared of what others might think of it. I actually have a lot of thoughts on this that I'd like to dive deeper into in a separate video, so I won't get too much into it now. But I'm still making strides toward publication, and if I can get over my fears, I'd love to see it in print in the next year or two. So that's everything I have to say about Crucible today, and while I know this is kind of a weird one, I still hope it caught your interest and that maybe you'll have the chance to read it someday. I'm really enjoying getting to talk more in depth about each of my books, and I hope that you are too. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again with another video very soon. Bye!